in Wales picked up a huge amount of information about the Welsh team, and particularly their backline. And that won the match for them.
He was a spy deeply embedded in enemy territory.
He had his spies over there, and he knew, and he built a match, the tactics around that. And when and since subsequently reading about him, and then he went on. At that stage, he was studying veterinary here in Dublin, and he decided to go to London. He wanted to learn more about surgery, because he had ideas about veterinary surgery.
Okay.
And he went to London, and he was found a member of London Irish. He's the first international out of London.
And there's
Irish.
and I was aware that there was a McGee connection in London Irish.
So he was there. He captained the side the second year over there, and like London Irish Madame, it's a great club now. It's still a great club. People get a little bit confused.
Yeah, the professional franchise is gone.
The professional is there, but the club itself is hugely energetic and well run.
I went on a schoolboy tour there in the Christmas of '81, where we played 2 matches over there when I was in school.
It's marvellous. So I was just glad, going back to what you're asking me, being president, I felt as though, in a certain way, I was honouring my grandfather.
And that leads into a great story, the veracity of which you can confirm or deny. But there is an apocryphal story of, there was a collage on the wall here to the history of all the McGees. And the Major took the hump one day and took it home with him.
He did.
And he put in his will, I have heard, that would not go back up until you were president of the club. And it did, is that correct?
Right. Well, it's known as the Illumination. It was here, hopefully it'll be back again. It was presented to my grandfather by the club here when Ireland won the Triple Crown, when he captained it. And it's a remarkable bit of history when you read it, and when you look at the characters and the locations in it. Clongowes is in it.
Mm-hmm. Fine school.
Yeah, the RDS is in it. Now, Leinster, I was at a meeting when there was great discussion that Leinster would be the first team to play in the RDS. And I was able to put my hand up and say, sorry.
That's happened before.
That's not correct. Bective actually played in the RDS in the 1890s because they were looking for grounds. Mm-hmm. And it's in the Illumination, you can see it. And yes, so my father, in the latter stages of his life now, he was getting a bit grumpy, and it was understandable, he wasn't terribly well. But he took down, Frank O'Neill was the steward here at the time.
I remember him, yes.
And poor old Frank was wetting himself when he saw the Major coming in here and nearly taking the wall down with the thing. But he took it home, and yes, it was at home, it was in his flat, and then I heard that it was in the will. And but when I was president, the day I was brought in as president here, I brought it back, and it now belongs to Louis, who's out there at the moment,
coaching the first,
helping to coach the first.
That's a great story. So, the president of the union. I've always wondered, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but is that a titular role, or is it a hands-on role? And do you need to be a Machiavelli, or do you just need to run through your year?
You make up your own mind. I'm a firm believer that when you're president, in any situation, that you're there as an ambassador. And I built my role
as an ambassador for Irish Rugby.
Because, in effect, I had, through my years working on the union, I had been through the committees, I had chaired committees, I had done all of that. So in terms of the work and what I felt I could contribute to Irish rugby, I had done that part of it, for good or bad, whatever. And when the year came round to be president, I knew that my role was to represent Irish rugby. Now, it was marvellous, it was interesting, but no matter where I went, I wasn't Louis McGee from Leinster or Louis McGee from
Bective Rangers.
I was Louis McGee from Bective Rangers, always, everywhere. And that was the nicest thing for me. That was the best thing of all for me, and I was delighted with that. But no, I feel, now it's up to every president to make his own decision on that, but the way it's run now, the RFU, with with good governance and the committee structures and so on, you just have to oversee things at times. Look, Rugby is an extraordinary, the administration of rugby can be quite interesting at times, and there's no doubt that politics comes into it. And as Jim Glennon, my good friend, always said to me, Louis, there's more politics in rugby than there is in politics.
In Leinster House.
And he was in Leinster House
Yes.
at the time. But there'll always be little bits and pieces that you have to deal with. But no, it was a wonderful experience. And another part of it that I really enjoyed was working with the staff, because I had never really worked with staff like that before. I was a volunteer, working with professional staff in
paid
the
staff,
union.
yeah, career staff.
And I learned so much from them, and I really enjoyed working with them. And I think they enjoyed working with me because I didn't interfere. They would come to me for advice on different things, and we talked through things, but they made decisions or brought decisions up to the committee, and so on. But that was a
And we have a great Bective Ranger in there now as Chief Commercial Officer, one Pádraig P. Power.
Pádraig has done great work.
Pádraig, who was best man at my wedding in '97.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, he's been, Pádraig has done great work, and I mean, that end of it, the sponsorship end of it, the commercial marketing, my goodness.
Must be a behemoth of a.
It's
of
a
role.
huge, it's a huge role, and whenever I go away with the Irish team or anything like that, and the sponsors are there, you realise how important it is to them. Like they will turn on, like after the match in Paris there a few weeks ago when we lost New Zealand, back in the hotel, and Pádraig was there and the sponsors, and it was the sponsors who turned around and said, we want to say a few words here. We want to express our gratitude to the IRFU, to the Irish team, to the players, to Andy Farrell, to Johnny. There was no kind of, we've lost a match. No.
It's great to hear that they're not just giving you the check and nothing else.
They're hugely involved.
They're interlinked with the team.
They're hugely involved, and you have to remember that their contribution financially is massive. It's very important.
Okay. Look, Con Houlihan, who we mentioned, and you rightly pointed out, was a member of Bective.
Yeah.
Con was very much a hero of mine. I don't have many heroes, and there's a well-known saying, "Don't meet your heroes." But Con was the opposite of that, because I thought he was a fabulous man.
Yeah.
Con once said that journalism is asking the difficult questions. The rest is just PR. So I'm going to practice my inner journalism here. I'm not trying to be Ewan McKenna, but do you think, an honest question, do you think the IRFU and Mr. Nusafora, who I understand has a very difficult role, right, and it was probably best at the time that we brought in an outsider to make some difficult decisions, because all the provinces are still parochial and tribal.
Oh yeah.
But do you think the union has kind of semi-abandoned domestic rugby?
No, in no way. I have to say, through my time in the IRFU and subsequently the domestic game, as we call it, which incorporates so much. It's the clubs, it's the schools, it's the women's game, it's the sevens game too, in part. It's a huge part of Irish rugby, and the IRFU have continually tried to make sure that the clubs are safe, that they can develop. Now, if you go back about 20 years, I think it's fair to say a lot of clubs, probably including ourselves, wasted money.
Ideas of above our station, maybe?
But got into different, we're very lucky here now in this club. We're financially very stable. Hard work done by the members here. And I like to call it not the volunteers. We have members here who pay their subs and volunteer to do their work. And they've done it here. And we're coming back now to this place where I think is very important. We're a strong club again. But if you look at the clubs around Ireland during that period, they went through a huge amount of money into serious debt, with the result that the IRFU were being blamed for this. I never agreed with that. I think people have to make decisions. Clubs had to make decisions at that time, and a lot of money was spent when clubs hadn't got that money. Now the IRFU have worked very hard, not just in terms of putting finance on the table, saying there's a check or things like that. I think it's far more than that. I think it's about a complete picture of developing
Structure.
a structure within which you have coaches and you have strength and conditioning coaches and you have all of that can go out to the clubs, that can go around the provinces, which has happened, and to develop all these younger coaches coming through. And we see it here in Bective now. We see it happening. David Nusafora had a job to do, and his view, the clubs would have been over there as far as he was concerned. He was looking at a particular pathway.
The pyramid with the Irish team at the top provinces.
What you have to understand is that the pyramid, the top of that pyramid, is the cash cow, and the money cascades down. And if you want to be honest about it, in terms of finance, there's probably only one province capable of making money, and that's Leinster. Munster are in debt, Ulster are in debt, Connacht are in debt.
Munster's debt tied up 9 million outstanding on Thomond Park.
And that's not me reflecting badly on them. It's not. It's
just a statement of fact.
It's a statement of fact. So the finances, when you read the finances and you see that the RFU
last year's financial report, sorry to cut across you. 75 million for the professional game costs and elite player development. Domestic game 13 million. Yeah.
Well, you see, if you look at the professional game now and you ask, do you want your provinces to be playing at a level that's going to bring the players through to the national side, to a World Cup, to be able to play as well as they've done in the last 10 years, you have to have a structure in place that is as professional as it can be. And I think in Ireland now, as Gregor Townsend acknowledged recently, we probably have one of the best structures in the world.
To be fair, I would agree, yes.
And that's for producing the professionals.
And we're the envy of other unions around the world, yes.
So I think from a domestic point, just looking at it around the country, I think clubs now are much more settled. They know their boundaries, they're
balancing the books.
They're definitely balancing the books. There's no doubt about that. And hopefully that'll continue.
Last piece on this. I know I'm like a dog with a bone. The Victor Meldrew in me, the Your Club, Your Country draw. So Pádraig gets fantastic prizes from our sponsors and he's excellent at doing that. But in effect, is it not saying to the clubs, well, you fund yourselves, whatever you can get out of your members and the tickets, you take that money away?
I mean, the clubs have already been funded. This is an addition to it. This is a way of saying, look, we're giving you the money there, but all you have to do is go and sell the tickets. And I think that's fair. I think it's fair. It's like whenever finance and all of this comes into play, it's always very difficult.
Contentious.
It's contentious. But I think the model in Ireland, the only area that I worry a bit about now, and I look at it here, and I see we're in the Junior League, Leinster A League, and we're playing teams, and every weekend there's a vibrancy around the matches. You've two teams playing, 1 o'clock, 2:30 or 3 o'clock, buzz around the club. That's very positive. It's a great atmosphere. And when I look at the bottom league in the All Ireland League, I say, God Almighty, I don't know whether we want to be travelling here, there, and everywhere. I worry about the league as it's structured. I think
the AIL.
Yeah, I think the AIL. 2 divisions, yes, maximum in my opinion, but then a more, not provincial leagues as such, but leagues that would take into account travel and so on, and that if you are maybe regional, I think is probably the word.
There's a fair amount of truth in what you say. I remember being here we played Monkstown, which is always our big game.
Yeah.
We had 150 people. This is Christmas last year, 150 people for the dinner. There was about 1,000 people out on the terraces. We all came into Bective, places, people hanging out of the rafters. It was brilliant. It was like the good old days, right? Except people need to be careful. I worked with a guy who, on his retirement, gave a great speech when he said, people talk about the good old days. Well, for the younger people, let me tell you, the good old days are right now. But afterwards, there was an AIL match where Wesley were playing one of the Munster teams, I can't remember, and there was 2 men and a dog out there watching it.
Yeah. It's something that the more I look at it, the more I just wonder. I've seen it with some clubs that have been promoted into the AIL and have done so on very, very good seasons, and yet as soon as they hit the AIL, they were gone.
It all falls apart.
They just collapsed.
Well, it's huge expense in travel, if nothing else.
Travel and players not wanting to travel.
Yeah.
It's just, it's in the mix.
Okay. So let's get back to why we're here. The wonderful Bective Rangers.
It is.
So you've seen loads of change. Yes. What's some of the changes since you came in the 60s?
Well, look, I'll tell you quite honestly, and I've said this throughout the last 2 to 3 years. In my mind, the club is in the best position it has ever been in my lifetime, and I mean that 100%. Jack McAvoy came in as chairman of the executive, which I thought was a great appointment, not just because of Jack, but because of the position itself. It took away the pressure off the president. Mm-hmm. It was one of the things I had talked about, and I'd also talked about governance, because I firmly believe that throughout the years here, if there was one area that worried me and I wasn't comfortable with, I felt that governance wasn't adhered to throughout the years here.
Specifically in what area? Without pointing the finger.
No, I think just generally there was, with governance you have people in position who are put in position to carry out particular roles, and if situations arise where their particular area is overlooked or perhaps decisions made without their agreement, well then you have a problem. And I think we had a problem here for a long number of years. I'm honest about it when I say about Bective now. I think it is in the best position I've ever seen it. I just look at the vibrancy in the club, the energy in the club, the minds, the younger people who are working in the club now, business people with good ideas for the future. And I look at this clubhouse now, and it's a pleasure to come into it. It was last Saturday we played Monkstown, and I brought Mick Coughlin along. Now Mick was a member here back in the 70s and 80s, and he hadn't been here for a while. And he just thought, my God, it's fantastic. Martin O'Sullivan, my successor as president of the IRFU, was here, and he just said afterwards, this club is buzzing. He said, this is a fantastic job.
It is, and the job here was brilliant because we used our members volunteered to leverage their own particular skill sets. You had Paddy O'Brien, the builder,
fantastic.
Mola Architecture, Brian Kavanagh on the engineering front. There's so many people.
You see, that's the contribution I'm saying, an incredible contribution from members who pay their sub and yet give up their expertise.
To paraphrase JFK, ask not what your club can do for you, ask what you can do for your club.
And I think the strategic review that took place has been very beneficial, because it has brought people out who were maybe just a bit on the sideline, not wanting to get involved, and then all of a sudden they saw the energy, and it went on, and then you had a number of them chairing up different groups, pushing forward, clubhouse being one of them, finance, rugby, the whole lot, and then all of that being brought together. And I think Sinead Jackman then bringing it all together, and there's Bernard outside with the first team now, and that's lovely to see that even family connection.
And it's a family. I always explain to people this is a family, but you spoke about energy, which I think is a great adjective to explain, because there is an energy. And look, I'm a lapsed member. I went out to Greystones, got married, had 3 daughters, reared them. I'm now back, and there is a metamorphosis happening here. We're nearly Phoenix-like coming out of the ashes and a rebirth of Bective.
Well, it's on its way. It's going to take a lot more work. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Okay.
I think that we look each year to the first team, and what kind of team we're going to have and so on. I think the club has to look very carefully now, and it's beginning to, there's no doubt, at the underage. Now the minis are fantastically run. I mean, I came down here last Sunday.
Richie Maybury, Paul Hatton doing great jobs.
Superb, you know, and it's they see the energy of the kids and the enthusiasm and wearing the Bective jersey and socks and everything. It's fantastic. But then we don't have an under-20s. Okay. I think that we need to look more carefully at further down. We need to look, say, around under-17, which I think is already happening from what I can gather.
I believe Weewa and Emmett are working on behind the scenes.
And a few others working on it. And I think that's where we have to start, to build up an underage system here that will bring them through to under-20s. So as we're not going out every year trying to get somebody for under-20, you bring them through. Now you won't bring them all through though, but if you get a group of them from a school, you get one or two, you'll get 7 or 8.
Back in my day, Kevin O'Farrell was the hook to get Clongowes in here.
Yeah.
He was under pressure from the BOF.
Yeah.
You go to Bective or you don't come home.
Yeah.
Probably the same that you had with the Major.
Well, no, funny enough, the Major never forced me. I made a decision myself. But if I go back to my grandfather, he was Clongowes. So he was the one that attracted all the players in the early 20s and 30s into Bective from Clongowes, and probably Belvedere as well, the Jesuit connection at that time.
Yeah.
So it's there, but that's the area I think we really, really have to look at very carefully, because if we don't, we'll be going out every year trying to get an under-20 side together. That's not going to work. That's not going to be a firm foundation for bringing players through to senior level.
It's probably the country, you know, where we need to go at. The Clongowes in Newbridge and Birches tapping Newbridge, the Ross Grays.
Yeah.
This is probably, in my opinion, the most non-D4 club in D4 because it's full of coaches. I'm a coachie.
But you can see it at the moment. I mean, the under-17 crew are coming together. There's a big Blackrock influence there. So it's tapping into that. But that is something anyway. That's my view on that.
And we hope your grandson...
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I know he loves coming down here. He's on the senior squad now, even though he's in 4th year. So all I want for him and for his brother James is that they enjoy their rugby. Really, I don't mind where they play, but I told them that if they go anywhere else, they'll be disinherited.
Good man. Well done. So let's talk about, we talk about family here, and it is a family and it's full of characters. I mean, I can remember trying to explain to my wife about how, I was in the club. Who were you with? I was with the badger, the dog, the trout, the squirrel. Everybody in Bective has a nickname. There's people in here, my nickname is Chuck, and there's people in here who have no idea what my name is whatsoever. But this place is full of characters. Regale us with some of the characters.
Well, the characters, I mean, the ones that come to mind to me are, there was a group which we always refer to as the last of the summer wine. It included my father, Harry Dernan, who was Mick O'Loughlin's uncle, Reggie Callan, and Mickey Ford.
And they had their corner.
And they would have discussions, and sometimes
they were like the Senate.
Sometimes a little bit heated, but they would have their discussions. And there was one occasion when my father and Harry were up at the bar and they were getting into a very heated discussion where they were now kind of pushing each other in the chest, and Mick Sweeney was looking at it and he says,
"This is going to go off here.
Major McGee moves like a butterfly and stings like a bee."
Muhammad Ali.
And that took the steam out of the whole thing. But they're the sort of characters, like they were. It was lovely to watch. It was lovely to listen to them because they had stories. Harry could talk forever. My father the same. And they loved the club here. They were loved by the members. But they were last the summer wine. There was one occasion when they decided that they would go down to see Jack Guiney, who had now moved to Wexford. Jack, that we honoured recently with his cap. And Jack was very fond of them. A great friend of my father's. So they planned this journey down.